Madden and Benz, Unfiltered with me, Tim Benz, and Mark Madden, brought to you by Bella Construction. 27 years of experience, specializing in roofing, siding, windows, and doors. Their large purchasing power now means unbeatable prices and top quality. For free estimate, call 724-515-5163 or simply visit mybellaRoof.com. Bella Construction, where quality and affordability meet. Mark played a little hurt today. Mark, thanks for coming on. I know you're not feeling great.
Correct.
All right, we'll get through it and then get you on your way. But Steelers win, get a victory over the Chargers yesterday, improved to 3-0. Your biggest takeaway from what you saw yesterday, was it about the quarterback, the fact that he played well enough to be really putting a stamp on the win, or was it again about the defense and what they did?
I thought it's the first win that Justin Fields can sign his name to. I think the other wins, he just happened to be the quarterback. This time he steered the ship, so full credit to Justin Fields. I think the defense is showing signs of becoming an elite unit and not just a meh unit with a number of elite players on it. It has a lot of depth. And again, you got Highsmith getting hurt. I mean, that's always going to happen, part and parcel. The Steelers benefited from some key Chargers injuries yesterday, to be sure. But I still think there should be a question at quarterback. I say should be because I don't know how Tomlin feels. I know conventional wisdom holds you don't take out the guy who's won 3 games in a row. And who knows if Wilson's going to be ready for Indianapolis anyway. But I just don't see the Steelers beating good teams with Fields. And we should keep in mind that we all thought they could start off pretty good, because the hard part of their schedule is not till the second half. We're a long way from that.
For sure, but I will give them credit for at least doing what they're supposed to do, because there have been seasons in recent years where we've said the same thing, where they've had backloaded schedules with a lot of AFC North games in the second half of the season, and they haven't gotten off to the types of starts that they were supposed to. Go back 2 years to when we all thought that they'd be in good shape after 8 games, the year that they drafted Pickett and got Trubisky, and they were 2-6. And had to scramble their way back and got a hell of a lot of injury luck when it came to other teams' quarterbacks to make a go of it that year to potentially get in the playoffs. They're at least taking care of business in what they're supposed to be doing this year with a softer schedule up front. And yes, a very winnable game coming up. I mean, look at the numbers that Richardson is putting up for the Colts. I mean, the guy's got tons of talent, but right now he doesn't know how to put it together. If you're 4-0 going into the Cowboy game, and even the Cowboys look like they could be beatable at this point, the Ravens just beat them when they're not playing great football. Yeah, I mean, this would be exactly what the doctor ordered to give themselves some cushion going into what could be a brutal second half.
There's no question. You can only play who you're scheduled. And maybe the second half won't be that brutal. I mean, look at how the Ravens and Bengals, for example, have done so far. Although the Ravens got a much-needed win at Dallas. If they hadn't won that game, their season would have been over. But I look at Anthony Richardson. I look at him as like just the even less experienced version of Justin Fields. He doesn't know how to play quarterback yet. And I don't look at Fields' game yesterday as this harbinger that he's arrived. And now he's the legitimate Steelers quarterback, and perhaps even that for the future, Tim. Fields had the occasional good game in Chicago, too. He's going to have to play more than one good game for the Steelers to prove that it wasn't just an anomaly like those games were in Chicago.
Well, yeah, and if you want to talk more about Richardson, all you have to do is look at the 2 throws. I think he had them back-to-back. I know they're on the same drive. He threw a beautiful dart, like 60 yards in the air or something like that, to Alec Pierce from the Colts. Made a great catch, and then they're deep in the red zone, and a snap or two later, he throws one of the most horrid interceptions I've ever seen in my life into 3 guys from the Bears in the end zone. That's exactly what the Steelers are going up against, and you would think that they'd be able to bait him into some similar throws like that. So, yeah, I do have confidence in them going to Indianapolis and getting a win. It's just, what do they do at quarterback now? And, Mark, I think the big thing is they've got to be honest with themselves. If they decide to stick with Justin Fields, they've got to take the restrictor plate off and let him play the whole game like he did the second half yesterday.
I disagree. If you're going to take the restrictor plate off Justin Fields, that's exactly why you should go to Russell Wilson.
Or go to Russell Wilson. It's one or the other, yes.
Fields is playing scared, and he's better at that than he was at playing hero ball in Chicago. The problem is the Steelers never think in the big picture. If you think in the big picture, you really give strong consideration to using Russell Wilson because he's the guy that is more likely to win a playoff game or to win big games in the second half of the season to get you in the playoffs. But the Steelers' rationale, and it's always been Tomlin's, Tim, is that, okay, Fields won last week. He should be able to give us a chance this week. It's never about the week after or the week after that. It's about the next week. And you can argue that's good. I could argue it ain't gotten him a playoff win in 7 years.
I want to hear from Steelers fans on this. What would you do now if Russell Wilson is healthy against the Colts? I get your point, Mark, that if you're going to feel the need to continue playing Justin Fields the way he's been playing, especially in the first half of games, then you should go to Russell Wilson. Because if that's the only way you feel that Justin Fields can win, you can't win like that. You can't win with a quarterback completing 11 straight passes to start a game for 64 yards. I mean, that should be impossible to do, but they did it, and they were still in a nail-biter of a ball game at halftime against the Chargers. You can't play that way.
It's not sustainable. But one thing I do want to give the Steelers credit for is they played the best half they've played in a long time, that second half, right, where they just, dominated both sides of the ball. And I thought they really controlled the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball for the entirety of the game.
Yeah, because one thing we didn't see was the time of possession ticking up in favor of the Chargers too much. You never saw them, aside from the one scoring drive they had. Beyond that, it wasn't about J.K. Dobbins grinding through the defense and getting 4 and 5 and 6 yards per carry to set them up for second and third down and makeable. They took a guy who was averaging 9.9 yards per carry, and they held him to 44 yards. It felt like the one drive that the Chargers had was an out-of-nowhere anomaly. I don't know where that came from. The Steelers looked disjointed. They had 10 men on the field once. They had poor coverage in the secondary, which has never been the case so far this year. They got beat on a play that Joey Porter Jr. said was just their
You're allowed to have a bad series once in a while.
Yeah, that came out of nowhere. And aside from that, I thought the defense was fantastic. And you also, you know what you're allowed to do, Mark? You're allowed on occasion to have a turnover. And Justin Fields threw an interception. And you know what? The game didn't explode. It didn't get out of hand. Because their defense is good, they managed to withstand one stinking turnover. And that's got to be part of their mentality moving forward with him.
They lost the turnover battle and won the game, which I know is rare for them. But it's rare for them because they make it rare for them by not trying to make enough plays.
Right, yes, because everything is so conservative.
They break the game down to the turnover battle, but it's not something that's universal. It's what they want.
I understand that Fields, in part, is playing the way that he's playing because of circumstances. If he's not kept here, he's going to be a free agent. So he wants to stay in the good graces of the team. So he's trying to do whatever he can to hold on to this position. And once he becomes the starter entrenched, if that's the case, then yeah, he might start taking more chances. The ball might be put in harm's way a little bit more often. But also, I think to reap the best of what you get out of him, you have to let him loose some, particularly early in games, because they're doing a little bit more of that in the second half.
I don't know that they're going to.
No, then they should go to Wilson then, if that's the case, and just play.
What they need to do with Fields as the quarterback is run the ball more. He only carried 6 times yesterday. Had the short gain for the touchdown, but they're not having him run the ball. Again, I keep saying, and the Steelers are a poorly coached team. They just are. I don't care if they're 3-0. They were 11-0 at one point, and they were a fraud then and a poorly coached team. I actually think they're less of a fraud now than they were then because I think their defense might be, like I said, that elite unit as opposed to just a couple of elite guys. Then again, they had Ben back then, didn't they? But
yeah, they did.
But they just don't ever go for the jugular. They just keep trying to squeak out narrow wins, and again, not sustainable.
All right, so Steelers fans, we want to hear from you on that. I want to get one more point in there about the run game, Mark, because I do think Fields getting involved in the run game would aid things. Because just look at what the numbers are when you take a step back. We feel like they're this smash mouth, pound the ball, and there's a lot of truth to that, but the numbers don't reflect it being efficient. I think, again, they were averaging about 3.7 yards per carry yesterday. They ran it 31 times, and they were good in the fourth quarter. I'll give them that. They were good in the fourth quarter, but I think it was like 20 carries for 34 yards at one point heading into the fourth. And if they're going to run as much as they do.
The running game is not nearly as dynamic as we hoped it would be with Oppenheimer.
Right.
And it says a lot that the best thing they did yesterday was use the middle of the field. I think there were 15 throws between the numbers, and they actually got some yak. And Kenny the Kangaroo scored a touchdown, which, they should put a statue of him because it wouldn't take much copper. But they just, if that's the thing they did best, then the offense isn't what was promised.
Yeah, Scotty Miller, the other guy, is about Austin's size. He had a big catch as well. So at least the secondary wide receivers besides Pickens managed to contribute a little bit. Not much, but a little bit. Oh, one other thing on defense, Mark. I forgot about this. When and if Highsmith comes back healthy, do you go with Herbig anyway and make Highsmith the third outside linebacker?
I might have done that before now, but I think the evidence is pointing at that, yes.
I think the one thing you got to see from Herbig on an extended look is how he plays against the run, because Highsmith, from what I've been able to glean, is still better than him against the run. And when Herbig comes in little spots, it's not like there's a game plan to say, hey, try to run it at that guy. Try to exploit that guy on that side. And maybe if Herbig is there, especially with the numbers that Watt is putting up against the run on the other side, that happens if Herbig is the starter.
Let me ask you, Tim, how do you think Watt played against Alt, that 6'8" rookie?
Not bad considering the matchup. I do think there was constant pressure, even though it wasn't the TJ Watt show that was the case in Atlanta, per se.
I thought Alt did a great job on him in the first half, and I thought Watt wore him down in the second half, and Alt ultimately left via injury. But
it's Slater that left via injury.
Every time TJ, excuse me?
It was Slater that left via injury.
No, Alt left via injury too.
When did he leave?
I think the fourth quarter.
Oh, all right. I know in the first half what you were seeing were they were bouncing him, they were chipping him outside, and they were redirecting him outside a ton. Like he was having to do the Bud.
I don't know. Maybe you got me thinking now. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I got it backwards. Maybe it is the other guy. But Alt, when he controlled TJ early, people said, well, he's getting double teamed all the time. Yeah, the other guy's never allowed to win the battle.
Well, they just had a good game plan against him. I mean, regardless, you better chip him with a tight end, especially if you got a 265-pound tight end.
I give TJ a lot of credit. I give TJ a lot of credit for hanging in there and having like a great end of the third, all of the fourth quarter. That said, he wasn't on the field much in the fourth because the offense scored 10 points, and I think had the ball for the last 5 minutes and then took the knee to preserve the under. God bless Mike Tomlin.
Well, I was thinking that too. A lot of people were actually on the under and worried about that. And Tomlin took one for everybody. But you know what, Mark? That's because he likes to win that way. It probably galled him that they had to get to 20 to win the game, even though technically I guess they didn't have to get to 20. But hey, why go to 26 if you can win with 20, right?
Whenever the Steelers get to 20, they should just end the game. That should be like the Elam
basketball ending. Rule. Yeah, the
Elam ending. When the Steelers get to 20 games over, they win.
Yeah, exactly. How about the start of Penguins training camp, Mark? Have you been up there yet or no?
Say it again.
Have you been up to Penguins training camp yet?
No, because now that my show starts at 2, that's even more logistically difficult.
I went up for the first day, talked to Sid for a little bit about his contract being signed and who he wants to play with. And I said, okay, if it's you and Brian Rust, who do you want your other winger to be? What qualities do you look for in a winger along with you guys? And he said predictability was the first word that came out of his mouth. And there's never been a more predictable answer than Sid saying predictability in his line mates.
We talked about that on the podcast, Tim. I'm a little surprised you didn't just say speed. And like that Beauvillier guy is just a bum. He's a friggin' bum. Always has been. But it looks like he's getting a crack there because of his speed. And I don't know. I think Sid needs to look for more than that, as he in the later stages of his career.
Yeah, I think he needs somebody who can help do some heavy lifting on their own, and I think that's part of the reason why Rucker
that's why McGroarty will never play with Sid, because McGroarty's not that fast. So Sid will just dismiss that out of hand.
I brought it up to Rust, and Rust seemed intrigued. And I think that's because Rust kind of watches college hockey, and Rust knows who the kid is and was familiar with them because of the Michigan tie and all that. So I know Rust is from Notre Dame, but I think he was aware of who he is and had a pretty good scouting report on him. So he seemed intrigued. But I think you're right insofar as raw foot speed is not allegedly his strongest suit. But then again, Mark, Sid, he and Russ both, they're getting up there in years. Maybe they're not as fast as they both think they are.
Well, don't forget, it's not that Sid can't play another way. He just won't. He wants to play the same way as he did when he came in the league, and mostly he can't because he's just as fast, almost just as good. But, there's more than one way to skin a cat. When your teammate made the playoffs in 2 years, maybe you need to look at a different way. But that ties into Tim. The power play is going to be the same jumbled message spin. I guarantee it.
Well, the power play, I'd love to see where McGroarty would fit on that because I think he can do multiple things. He could work well, but then again, he might just be on the second unit.
I think he'll just be at Wilkes to start the season, and that's okay. As I've said repeatedly, guys like McGroarty and Koivunen, they need to play top 6 in Wilkes if they're not going to play top 6 in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. You want to see them develop. I think you want to see them get better, get their skills better. But then again, if this is
you don't want to see them play a wasted 9 minutes in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, but I would think that an aggressive move like that to get McGroarty and the moves that they made to get the guys from Gensel, that should signal to Sullivan, we got to go younger and we got to play these guys more.
Yeah, it might not.
How about the blue line? What do they do with Graves? I think that's one of the bigger questions, don't you? Or do you just say, hey, Ryan Graves, you're relegated to being a bottom 6 player anyway. It's just that your contract's too big. It's not about what you get out of the play.
That's what he is. He's a bottom pair defenseman. You just have to resign yourself that you signed the wrong guy, and now he's a bottom pair defenseman with a $4.5 million cap hit. Unless he can play well enough to jump in a top pair ahead of Grizzly.
Yeah, I think that's more up to Grizzlick and how good he is and what they can find out of him into this system. If they still want to play with speed and they still want to think up the ice, then I think Grizzlick can be a part of that and be it effectively. But, there are still holes
I don't know about
game.
that. I think Grizzlick's a defensive defenseman primarily, as is Pettersson. I think one mistake they've made in the past, and again, it's something they won't correct. I think Sully's a great coach, just not for this roster. Here's what they won't correct him. They always have their defensemen, all 6, jump into play as per, preconceived determination. Like, if this happens, you go there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And when Pettersson and Grizzlick do that this year, as Pettersson in the past and Graves in the past, and, anybody not named Letang or Carlson last year, they join the rush. They don't help. They don't get an opportunity. What usually happens is they're out of position when the other team gets the puck and comes the other way. One size doesn't fit all. But the way that team plays, from first line through fourth, from top pair through bottom, one size fits all.
All right, so get some comments in Penguins-wise, too, and we'll get to a few. I know we're having some issues with the comments, so we'll try to get as many in as we can, and we'll try to figure out to get them through what we can do here. But let's get to the Pirates.
What's the issue with the comments? They stink?
I don't know. We've only got a couple up here, and I think they got backlogged or something. So just post the comments, and we'll get to what we can. I want to get to one thing about the Pirates, Mark, and that's Paul Skenes, whether or not he should be Rookie of the Year. I think we're out thinking this. He's a rookie pitcher with a 1.99 ERA, 167 strikeouts. He's 11-3. And this is supposed to be an era in Major League Baseball where we don't think too much about the win stat. If he had a bunch more wins, like the number of wins that he would have had if he played on a better team and the team had finished off the wins when he left the game with the advantage on the Pirates' favor, then he would be the Rookie of the Year, no doubt about it. Like, Jackson Merrill's having a great year for San Diego. I don't want to, urinate all over his season. He's having a great year. But let's not overthink this. Skenes has been dynamic.
Yeah, in APA baseball, Tim, the board game, Skenes would be a grade A pitcher with X, Y, and Z strikeout and control. So, yeah, he's my Rookie of the Year for sure.
Yeah, and I understand that maybe Pirates fans
I look at the comparison, and I don't get the perceived threat of Jackson Merrill, who does not have lights out stats for hitter like Skenes does for a pitcher, and Skenes has had 10 times the hype. But you know what hurts Skenes, don't you, Tim? Pittsburgh.
Yeah, because he's playing. I think if you look at that number, and that number is 15-3 or 16-3, he's winning Rookie of the Year. But, we love to pretend that the win stat doesn't matter anymore until it's applied in this way of thinking. And because he plays on a bad team, he hasn't had enough wins. So we look at a guy with a 289 batting average and a bunch of RBIs with a team that gets on base a lot. Again, a stat that we're not supposed to pay attention to, the stat nerds say, and he's going to win Rookie of the Year.
For a team that has the record the Pirates do and has let Skenes down so often, 11-3 is great.
Yeah, given what
I don't see how anybody could dismiss that.
All right, let's get to some of the comments, whatever we have here. Ron says for the defense, Steel Curtain 2. I don't think it's that good. I don't even know if it's as good as the teams in the 90s or the 2008, 2010 team, but it's got fewer flaws. And one of those fewer flaws is, Mark, it's got more team speed in the back half. The linebackers are faster. The secondary is faster. And I think they're just more stout up front, so they're not getting gashed in the run game.
I agree with what you said. I thought Patrick Queen, by the way, had his best game of his three as a Steeler yesterday. But again, drawing conclusions after 3 games is just insane. And I think Ron made his proclamation at least somewhat sarcastically.
Eric says it's only 1 game, but it's premature to question if they should unload the cap hit and see what they can get for Highsmith and turn that side over.
Yeah, that's way too premature. Talk about drawing conclusions. Yeah, you need 3 edge rushes.
Not only do they need 3, but if they're going to get rid of Highsmith, they're getting rid of Highsmith because he's hurt. And no one's going to pay for somebody to give up, draft picks or whatever for an injured player. He's had this groin injury that's been going on for a long time now, so you're trading damaged goods. Mark, I keep hearing that the Steelers should trade Russell Wilson to the Dolphins and get Jalen Waddle. They're not going to give up Jalen Waddle. They're not going to give up a wide receiver.
Or like a second round pick.
Yeah, I've heard that one too. They're not going to get that much in return for.
Here's what the Steelers should do and what they could do, and I mean this very sincerely. If they decide that Fields is the guy, they're not going to trade Wilson. Not going to start Wilson. If Wilson wants traded someplace he can start, they should trade him for a 6th round pick because they owe that to him after I am certain he was promised the starting job.
This comes from Rick, who says, to what I wrote about Justin Fields today, if the organization feels there's more to Fields' game than Pickett's, then they should let him show it. They definitely need to if he starts again next week. Rick counters that by saying your argument is conditional, as in if and then. It's stuck in the past, still bringing up Kenny Pickett. That's done and that's gone. Well, no, it's not, because this coach is still here. This coach is still the guy who coached Pickett and had the same mentality about Kenny Pickett, which is turnovers are death and we can't take any risk.
I think they look at Fields in a very similar fashion to how they look at Pickett. And I think that's evident in the approach they take.
Yes, I think that's true. I think that's accurate. I think they're applying the same mentality to both players. That was my point when I wrote it. Steve says on the baseball front, the Reds fired David Bell for the exact same reason the Pirates should fire Shelton. And not only did they fire him, but they did it before the season was over. I think they call that accountability, a word that has no Yinzer equivalent in its limited sports terminology about managers and coaches. I don't know how much accountability there's.
It amazes me that at long last, the idiots out there don't get that it's not about accountability. It's about Derek Shelton still having at least 1 more year left on his contract, and they're not going to fire him and pay him for not managing. They're just not going to do that. Every single move they make is about money. Every single move, and down to the last penny. That's how closely they keep their eye on it. So when people blame Sherrington and blame Shelton and demand accountability, you just don't get the basis upon which this franchise is run.
Here's another one from Local Hero. He says, Najee with another ho-hum 3.9 yards per carry. If Jalen Warren isn't healthy, they need another running back in the mix. Najee ain't it. I think he's running hard.
Yeah,
I
let's
think
just keep trading for people.
The
I heard they're going to trade for Javonte Adams, Tim. That's the latest on Twitter. They're going to save Davante Adams from Las Vegas.
Oh, Davante Adams is the new target now?
Davante Adams, rather. I'm sorry, yeah. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, let's trade. Let's get him. Let's get Jalen Waddle. It just.
Well, the Davante Adams thing,
I think Najee's been great.
I don't know what more Najee can do with the carries that he's had, and it's also kind of playing into the run game that they've advanced. Run it into the line, grind it out, wear it down. Najee's good at that. So, I don't put the failures of the run game so far on Najee. I just don't see gaping holes that he's supposed to be exploiting.
Oh, that's the hidden failure of what's gone on so far, Tim, is that the run blocking has not been nearly what it should be. You're right. The holes aren't there, and there's contact before the line of scrimmage way too often. I don't have that number in front of me, but you can see it.
Yeah, and Jaylen Warren has not been healthy. They didn't say it was an extension of the hamstring injury or something like that, but there's obviously something wrong with the guy. Tomlin
he ain't that good anyway. He's an okay number 2 back. It's typical Pittsburgh that the guy who's second in line must be better because the guy who's first in line isn't a superstar.
Yeah, and they love Cordell Patterson, or at least Arthur Smith loves Cordell Patterson, so they're more than willing to go to him all the time and eat up other carries if they need other carries eaten up.
I think he averaged the most yards per carry yesterday, though.
Patterson, yeah, probably, because he didn't get the volume, but yeah. This one comes from 2 Hip Hop.
He got some garbagey time stuff, so.
He says, good game. They got lots of people catching the ball. Chargers were supposed to be a great defense, but ours was better. It was a nice home opener. They didn't have a lot of people catch the ball, but when they got the ball to Austin and they got the ball to Miller, there were impactful catches. I'll give them at least that. There were impactful catches from Austin and Miller. They had a big play, they had a splash play they needed, and then that Miller catch was huge because I think that response from the offense after the defense had its one bad drive was big. They caught right back up right away, so the coaches didn't have to sweat about it.
But they still have 3 touchdowns in 3 games. Their wide receiving core is still a mess. Now Van Halen left injured. Might have to bring in Gary Sharon. We're drawing conclusions after 3 games that might well be proven wrong.
This one comes about Herbig. I kept saying that Herbig is making them pay a price for double teaming Watt, something that Highsmith never does. I think that, honestly, it looked to me like Slater wasn't expecting what he got from Herbig, which was more speed and explosiveness in that first rush. And that was the play that he got hurt on. I think he got hurt reaching for Herbig, and then he dove for the fumble on top of that, and I think made it worse. And then he didn't play after that. And then Herbig, I think, helped exploit the backup, whoever it was. I also love the game that they ran, Mark, on the Landon Roberts sack. That little stunt they ran inside with Leal. That was creative.
That was great. They should do that more. They need more pressure up the middle, to be sure.
And the funny thing is, we saw as soon as Herbig came in, I think I've got this right. When Herbig came in, they had Leal kind of play the role that we kept hearing that Herbig would play with Smith and Watt both in the game, where he was like the third outside linebacker, but they brought him for the inside, except it was Leal that did it with Roberts, and it worked effectively.
Yeah, they need to do that more. They need to get more pressure in general in the middle. They need to get more takeaways, too. I know it was their first game without a takeaway, but if they're going to succeed based on the model, based on their method that they're using with, tiptoe on offense and, play good defense, you need to get more takeaways. That's the only way this is remotely sustainable, is to get more takeaways.
Last one here, Mark. I didn't see this from Eric. He sent a second one. I'm not a fan of lists, but how about what Cowher did, leaving Jack Ham off of his top 5 defensive players in Steelers history list? Did you see this?
Yeah, I don't care. I mean, he left Lambert off too. He didn't go, except for Mean Joe Green. Correct me if I'm wrong. I saw the list, but again, who cares? He didn't really go too old-timey, did he?
No, he went
for Mean Joe Green.
Mean Joe Green was 1. He had Blunt.
Rod Woodson.
Woodson 2, Blunt 3, TJ Watt 4, and then Polamalu 5. I can't put Watt that high because he hasn't done any of it in the playoffs.
I would have gone Mean Joe Green 1, Mel Blunt 2.
Woodson 3, Troy 4.
Who were the bottom guys? Huh?
The bottom, it was Woodson was 2, Blunt was 3, Troy and Watt were 4 and 5.
I'd have had Polamalu 3rd, Woodson 4, Jack Ham 5. I'd had Jack Ham 4, Woodson 5. Jack Ham 4, Woodson 5.
I mean, you probably have to leave Lambert out of that. You know, there's a lot of, if you're only going to do 5, their second 5 are all Hall of Fame worthy. So that's all you need to know is their second 5 could also be
no question, But I do hate lists like that. It's just conversation. But then again, that's all sports talk is. Tim, I can't wait. As soon as we're done here, I'm going to watch the re-showing of Get Up on ESPN because I am certain after the great performance by Justin Fields yesterday, those guys are like old men in a big old peep show booth.
Speaking of Hall of Fame worthy, they'll turn him into that, no doubt. How was PTO, by the way, last night?
It was great. It was great, no question. Yeah, Randy Bachman's 80. He has to sit on a stool to perform, but it's excellent. It's a great song because he does like the 5 greatest hits from the Guess Who as well.
Well, Mark, I'm glad you're feeling well enough to do this. Feel better. We'll do it again next week and have a good show.
I'm really not, but yeah.
All right, we'll do it next week. What? No, I didn't say anything.
Yeah, no, I hope I'm okay to do the show today. I'll find some things out between now and then.
All right, so Mark will be back with us next week after the Colts game. We'll do Madden Benz Unfiltered, Madden Monday podcast. And make sure you check this out in the re-air. We'll put it up on YouTube, and we'll put it up on Facebook Live as well. This is Madden Benz Unfiltered, brought to you by Bella Construction. Check out Bella Construction, myBellaRoof.com. We'll see you next week.